and Brian's online as well. Anybody?
I guess I would just say that as we had told everyone originally, the exercises were intended to be a starting point for the committee to look to see if we had some common ground with respect to opinions about the projects that were really most necessary. I think where we really found ourselves a little bit still struggling is the fact that the two exercises we did are not really very compatible. That is, the feedback from the two are quite different, and so being able to add in some of the things that Farhad talked about, particularly regionality and geographic coverage, as well as some other issues like identifying projects that perhaps we're leveraging local or federal and state monies better than others that may deserve a higher ranking. Those are the kinds of conversations we thought would be important, but we also said it was probably most appropriate at this table for a lot of those issues. We also found some big holes, I guess I'd call them that, where one where the town of Oro Valley had no projects, it seemed, that had risen into the saved category, if you will, and obviously that's not something the committee would have done intentionally, but it does show you that, like I said before, it's a starting point. So I guess we're ready to start.
Yes, go ahead.
Just a little housekeeping. How do you want to reference these two lists? Did the CAC name them?
Yeah,
So
one
when we're talking in discussion, we can quickly know what we're talking about.
Yeah, one was selection and the other was rank.
So selection was the 15.
If you look at
No,
the second
the
column,
other
look at the
way.
heading for the second column. The second column says ranking,
Oh, I see selection.
and then the second one says selection. That's how we want to differentiate those. And again, a comment that was made even at the last CAC meeting was, for some reason, we had 20 participants doing the selection and only 15 doing the ranking. So the selection was discussed more in depth at the last meeting.
Yeah.
Any?
And
Go
just
ahead.
one more
Go ahead,
question.
yeah.
So in terms of approach for the CAC, was there in coming up with this list, it was really just one pot of money, whether it's corridor, named, categorical, it's just a pot of money, and this is the list and how we'd like to use that. Is that whether it's through a ranking process or a selection process?
If I may, let me describe the exercise one more time for everybody's benefit.
Sorry.
So the ranking exercise, that was only for the 33 shortlisted projects. And the ask was rank those projects from 1 through 33. The selection exercise was more of a budgeting exercise that you have $1.1 billion for those corridor projects. And if that's the case, select the projects that you want funded. So what you see in green are the projects that fall within the budget. What you see in salmon color are the ones that fell outside of the budget. That answer the question? Yes. All right. Any other questions or comments on logistics or feedback? So if, again, you're all welcome to chime in, but I think it might be more productive to decide. Do you all still agree we should focus on the selection sheet instead of the ranking sheet?
No, I
Oh,
don't.
okay.
Although I initially thought it was more appropriate to do the selection because we had more participation. I know as an example on the ranking, I did the ranking and it didn't get recorded for some reason. Either I failed to hit save or something happened, but you know, I think that most people probably who participated did both. And to me, looking at the ranking was really what I had in mind to begin with as an outcome of this. To say these are the projects and kind of in the order that we want them. I would add one thing. It's been our conversation and I think our intent at this point to whatever projects we recommend in our draft plan, the remainder of those projects would be tagging along as a reserve list. The idea being that these are projects which we still fully support, believe should get built as soon as we can. And if we get, you know, favorable economic conditions and end up with enough money, then we should certainly take on those projects as, if not promised to the voters, at least vetted certainly by the community.
So if I may, if you recall, we had this conversation at the workshop as well back in September to maybe start the conversation with what's missing. And if you don't mind, I want to go through that discussion. So if you look at the selection sheet and look at the projects that are in the salmon, and we already touched on some of those higher level principles, I would like to maybe start with that conversation. Look at those projects.
Talk about the ranking as well. I heard the CAC.
We can do either one.
Yeah.
whichever one.
CAC said they wanna do
All right,
it.
fine. So start with the ranking sheet,
Thank
projects that are in the salmon. Let's go down the list from top to bottom and identify which ones you all believe that should not be a salmon color project and it should move up. And then we can just leave it at that. Does it belong to being reconsidered for funding? So the first one I have on my list is Morana project, Ina Road. And that is just at the cusp. So again, with the rank, with this one, with the ranking, there was no consideration of the budget at all. It was just, it's ranked number 25. So now this is where the art comes in. So if you all recall, you know, we talked about there's an art to doing this. So anybody wants to provide a perspective on why Ina Road should be funded and considered or reconsidered?
Question?
Sure.
Is there a way to pull it up? So we
Yeah,
can-
they're working on it.
Okay.
We got some technical issues, but you got the hard copy.
Yeah.
All right.
So they're asking.
Talking about the map.
The map.
You can visualize.
Yep.
You, I was gonna say, you're probably go first with the map.
Yes.
So from Miranda's perspective, there's two things here I'd like to highlight. Number one, the Ina Road was ranked higher for whatever reason than it got Miranda and Tangerine Road. So, you know, from our perspective in Miranda, we're looking at the totality of projects, then ADOT Miranda and Tangerine Road project would be higher, and I know we're not at that one yet. But from our perspective, if there's one that needs to fall off the list, it would be Ina Road. Approach that particular project. Now, do I think it's necessary? Yes. Do I think it's a road that's used by Wall Valley, Yuba County, City of Tucson? Are there other ways perhaps that we can approach that? Yeah. So, you know, I would say at this point, if there is a project that would be below the line in maintenance, I would say that.
Appreciate it. And thank you again for that reminder. So one of the criteria we talked about was jurisdictional priorities. So Thank you for that. So we can talk in terms of those projects together. And you have the ranking column right almost in the middle of the sheet. And again, Tangerine is ranked Marana's second highest, and Ina is ranked third highest. All right. Any other comments on the Ina Road project? Again, this was actually a more of a mutual discussion early on. The CAC developed that. Any other thoughts or concerns from CAC members why that was initially ranked? Nope.
No, we had identified that there were a number of these kind of anomalies where a ranking that we'd already received from the individual jurisdictions had somehow flipped around. And so yeah, that those certainly need to be dealt with. And I think with the TI, another example that next one on the list, and another example of leveraging other monies.
Yeah, good.
So-
And Brian, go ahead, please.
Thank you, sir. As I approach this, I put a lot of credibility into what the individual jurisdictions rank. They know their jurisdictions better than anyone else. So I appreciate Town Manager Rosema's comments. But as someone who lives on the northwest side and uses Ina Road frequently, especially since the Orange Grove off ramp is shut down right now, I will say the congestion on there is already probably at max capacity. And as far as the multimodal being vehicle, bicycle, pedestrian, there is significant risk there. In my work life is public safety. We get significant accidents in that region on a pretty regular basis. My worry is this is a 20-year plan, and if something's not done about that corridor, what will it look like 20 years from now? But again, I do go with the jurisdictional rankings of what is most important and as a big point in my consideration. So I appreciate the town manager's comments on that.
Thank you, Terry.
So in response to Brian's point, I think he's absolutely right. I mean, the road is very congested right now. Certainly a huge part of that is a result of what's going on with Orange Grove, which isn't a long-term problem. The town is looking at options in terms of what we can do to add capacity. The road is wide enough that we can add a lane without widening, and then perhaps use some of the bucket monies in the way of active transportation to maybe add a larger bike lane on either the north or the south side of the road, whichever that out there to bike off of Ina Road and put them multi-use paths. So those are discussions that we're having right now. We haven't solidified that, but I think it is important to know that the town is not looking at totally abandoning the idea of needing to add capacity and to take bikes out of the equation with traction with.
Thank you, Terry. And Brian, you made a good point. So we have the map. If you all take a minute and look at the map. So you have the Ina Road project on the northwest side, and you have Orange Grove, and basically there's nothing else in that entire area. So that regionality and impact or the benefit to the region easily is demonstrated on this map. And I don't know if it's easy to do, Jeanette. If you turn that off, basically all you have left is Orange Grove in that entire area.
Well, Farhad, I'd like to bring up that on the north side, Ina Road is one of those few roads that literally goes from west to east. You can get off at I-10 and travel all the way over to Sabino Canyon. So it is one of the few roads on the north side of the city where you can, it does approach several jurisdictions that allows you to travel across.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. And again, I'm just making sure that everybody's looking at all the angles. And I think Tom touched on it as far as leveraging our investments, both future and past. So the traffic interchange at Ina and I-10 with the grade separated crossing, those are investments that provided the opportunity to make this east-west corridor a significant corridor for the region. So please keep all that in mind as we continue the conversation.
Quick comment, Ina is definitely, in my opinion, a very regional type project. But in the spirit of the exercise, I didn't want it to go, I didn't want to join my voice in thanking Marana for that regional perspective and finding another way to still show some love to Ina Road, but for the purposes of this exercise, help us advance to our common goals. So thank you.
All right. Any other comments on that? All right. So again, we're not making any decisions. We're just going down the list and then we'll come back and revisit. So Tangerine, we touched on it again with significant investments from the RTA and the regional funds. And that's the traffic interchange improvement with the grade separated crossing. Again, the only project on that part of the town, which is on the far north end of the map here. Any comments, questions on that?
I just had a couple of questions. So I thought that ADOT said that this wasn't a priority for them. Is it now, or is ADOT just because it's on I-10?
ADOT did not submit this project as a priority. The town submitted it as a priority. I think ADOT's on this just because it's on our facility.
Okay.
I do believe it is a needed project for the region. That said, I'm not sure it's necessarily a needed project for the main line of ADOT.
And that's the key point. So, and with all due respect to our partners at ADOT, their focus is the main line, the region, and the locality's focus is the cross streets. So that's why it's more of a priority from that cross street perspective.
Okay, the other question is coming from the south part of the region, which is most of the region. The easier way and a really good way to go up the Tangerine off of the freeway is at Twin Peaks, and then it goes right up into Tangerine, and there's not, as far as this map, there's not a lot of development between Dove Mountain and where Twin Peaks turns into Dove Mountain and then west. So I think you had said that is where the outlet mall is, or is that Twin Peaks? Anyway. So is this interchange, I think I've asked you this before, needed now, or is it for when Tangerine builds out as Marana?
So actually Tangerine is being widened, ready to be widened as we speak. We'll start after the first of this year. In the lane. 2 miles from I-10. That's what the remaining. You know, from our perspective, I think it's very important that this project gets done. I think we have to remember that this is the 20-year project. So this is going. The idea that we wait a future date beyond 2046 it doesn't make any sense. We'll end up what we have at Cortero. You know, what we have now at Tangerine is manageable. We're certainly going to do some things in terms of widening at the buffer lane, basically Cortero-izing Tangerine. But Cortero is right now, but that's a short-term fix. And I think as a region, have to be thinking elimination of crossings with the railroads and increase the ability. Each major development comes out of the side. So that's going to add significantly to the problem within the next 5 years. A whole lot more houses, a whole lot more businesses. So all of that, that interchange is going to become more and more, not to mention all the stuff that's already happening on the west side with a whole lot more stuff there. So that's going to become an extremely busy interchange. And I think not do something now and the RTA next would be a
So let me piggyback on that. Then I got Brian, Chris, and then Rod, but let me piggyback on that again. It goes back to leveraging previous investments, and Terry touched on it. We're investing almost $80 million on improving Tangerine Road. By the time you get to the I-10, you're gonna end up with a bottleneck. Brian first, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Finish, because I still see the Twin Peaks as a way for somebody like coming to here. Because that's even with that new interchange going all the way up to the Tangerine and backtracking. So it seems like people would still be able to utilize Twin Peaks.
Well, and many people do use Twin
Yeah,
Peaks.
I mean,
There's
it's
no,
like
there's no
little-
question that
little
those who
parkway.
are, if you're going to Oral Valley and you're northbound on the I-10, you're gonna get off Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks, to get to Oral Valley, no question about that. Even people in Stub Mountain are gonna use Twin Peaks. From anybody who goes down Tangerine, I don't know what they're thinking, right? But I gotta tell you, I see people do it all the time though. You know, I follow them down Tangerine and they get
And makes
Twin
sense.
Peaks, but
That was really, yeah, oh, one more question. So the bulk of the money, the leverage dam, the RTA money is for that grade separated interchange. A lot of the other work they're doing right now in the bike paths and the sidewalks and the other things that are in here. In the project description, it talks about bicycle and pedestrian improvements. Is that just right around the railroad tracks that?
yes, that's to get over, similar to what you would see at Twin Peaks. The availability for bikes and pedestrians to go over instead of crossing.
Okay, thank you. I got Brian, then Chris, then Rod. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, and I'll just jump in again because I get off on Twin Peaks. I'm sorry, Tangerine every single day because I work in North Marina. And so my comments to this is, yes, the grade separated crossing I think is critically important. Anywhere where we have trains and people meeting, it doesn't usually go well. Additionally, Carolyn, your point of Dove Mountain and east using Twin Peaks is absolutely valid. If I'm heading to the Dove Mountain area, I take Twin Peaks, so that's not lost on me. But I don't think we should lose focus on, again, what's already in North Marina around Tangerine I-10 and what's coming. I would encourage anybody who has a question about the need to go to try to get off on Tangerine at 5 o'clock in the evening, because you will find yourself backed up onto the shoulder of the interstate. I'm surprised we don't have more accidents there. The off ramp is not nearly long enough, and like I said, there's cars backed way up the freeway on the shoulder. Additionally, the some of the projects going in up there now, there are massive distribution centers that are going in. There is land that is bought that's going to bring in more distribution centers. So now we're talking about a lot more semi trucks that are going to be using that interchange on a regular basis, and that's only going to compound the problem the way the interchange is currently set up. And the amount of residential that is slated to go out there, I'd be poor to speak to the numbers now, but it's going to be probably double, if not triple, what's currently out there now. All that land is already spoken for. It's already purchased. I know we see the cotton pickers out there right now picking cotton, but that's just because the builder's not ready to go yet. So I echo that interchange, I believe, is already problematic and is going to be an absolute nightmare in short order, the way growth is going. So those are my comments on Tangerine.
Thank you, Brian. I got Chris, Rod, and then back to Shane.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, in my opinion, this is the kind of project that should make the list. Demands, in my opinion, demands regional investment dollars. Because it has the mix of both local benefit as well as regional ripple effect benefit. growth is only gonna continue. And it's a 20-year plan. So in my view, this is the kind of thing where it can ease those ripple effects to the south. Because that's where everybody, that the center of gravity for population is to the south. So it's not in the center of the region. However, putting it in has all the benefits that the community has identified and that planners can identify and speak. So from I speak about regionality all the time. And in my view, this is exactly the kind of thing where this RTA tax money should look. Even though it's not a priority for ADOT, that's our opportunity down the road to say it needs to happen in the next 5 years, and it's in the RTA plan, so let's make it a priority. Got to say, move it up, right? I mean, we're bringing money to the table as a region, make it a priority. So that's
That, I appreciate that comment. Again, it goes back to that leveraging those funds. Again, with all due respect to ADOT, they don't have a lot of money so in the future, some of these projects really need that regional support to make it happen. Rod, you're next, and Shane.
So I'd like to make a couple of clarifications here. Chris, thank you for your comment. You know, ADOT, in its programming, we make suggestions to the PAG region and the PAG board. The PAG board makes the ultimate decision as to what projects ADOT delivers. As the operator of the system, it's our role to say, this is what we feel is important. This is what we feel is a safety need. This is what we feel should move forward. And the board makes the decision. I just wanted to clarify that. From a regional perspective, this project hits all the whistles, especially in terms of crossing the railroad. That'll provide a significant safety aspect. It'll provide a significant resolution to congestion behind the trains. It'll provide a significant impact to economic development when you remove that congestion for truck traffic going across. It provides that long-term aspect for removing this out to then help the development proceed at a faster rate. I just think that from a regional perspective, this is a very significant project, and I wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Shane. And Brian, you still have your hand up. If you wanted to speak, you can go after Shane. Go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, I just, in my own community, as a community, we're hard pressed to outside dollars playing in. And just wanted to acknowledge that it's out there in front of all of us, but this has $100 million of ADOT money on the table. So it's kind of hard to turn that away. So just thinking of.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Brian, you're next.
Yeah, Farhad, no comment. It shows my hand down on my side, so I'm trying to figure out
Okay, thank
the
you.
problem, but thank you.
All right, again, I think there is at least a level of support for regionality and recognizing jurisdictional priority as well as leveraging those dollars. So that hits the mark on all those things we talked about before. Rod, go ahead.
So now I'm going to play the Debbie Downer side. Sorry, but it's
Have another donut, man.
another donut. So there is the reality that ADOT's program is financially constrained. So if this is, leveraged and ADOT is then required to use that funding in this project, it's going to be offset somewhere else. That's not in the PAG in the RTA, or that's not in the RTA program. That offset will happen. Where that is, nobody knows. It'll be decided by a future board. But that's a reality of the.
Appreciate that. Go ahead, Terry, and then Shane.
I think the other thing it's important to note with these interchange projects is the amount of federal grant monies that are available, especially as it relates to eliminating railroad vehicles and railroad projects. So we have submitted for now, whether or not we get it, we're very hopeful that we'll get roughly 30 to 40 million for Terrell. Get closer to Tangerine, we'll do the same thing there again. So I think the opportunity for federal dollars to be, award these types of projects is very significant. The federal government has placed a high priority on eliminating and doing grade separated interchanges wherever they can. So we're hopeful that will be the case, but I think that's another thing to keep in mind.
Appreciate it. Shane. Shane was next and then
If you wanted to respond directly to that. you
Well,
can.
no, I just want to ask a question. If that grant is successful, would that be taken off of the RTA portion or from the ADOT portion? Like, say you get 30, would that reduce the RTA funding?
But we'd have to have Rod and Farhad,
so let me tell you from historical perspective, every single penny that comes in is a problem to have, and we look forward to that. Shane.
I also wanted to just note, trying to get this across the finish line with the voters. Marana is only listed with one project up on the funded side. And so I just want to make an observation there that we can do all the exercise we want, but at the end of the day, this has to get across the voters of the region. And so for that reason as well, I'd argue that we make sure that we get that project up on the funded side.
All right. Appreciate it. Thank you. Again, I'm summarizing as we go. We'll come back. But my understanding of that there is support for this project to be on the green list, not the salmon list. We'll come back and summarize that later. All right, moving on. The next one is Campbell Avenue from Benson to Valencia. That's Tucson's project and ranked number 6 by the city. Any comments on that? Does that belong in the salmon or green?
Guess we'd have Sam. Project, Campbell Avenue, Benson.
That was our number 6 ranked project. I would say that to answer that question, Carolyn, I prefer to take the opportunity, time's right, to present a prioritized project list to the group. So maybe I'll reserve my comments until that time.
Okay. Anybody else on Campbell? Anybody wants to make any statements about, does it belong to green or red for any specific other regional issues?
Yeah, I would just note that there's 4 other lower priority projects shown, and I just wait until Sam lets us know how those may have changed from what we see there.
Okay. Chris, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna, from a regionality standpoint, if I'm wearing my airport hat, right, but I'm not here on behalf of the airport, let's be clear about that. I'm not the airport's advocate, filling this seat. That's investment into an area of town that has suffered from a lack of investment and improvement. That's a corridor that activates lots of land in and around industrial, around the airport, etc. Whether it regionality, I as an individual, I can argue this should be a city priority. It should be higher on the list for investment of city transportation dollars. I think for me, again, this whole exercise is prioritization. It doesn't rise to the level. There are other projects that should get regional money. I view this as a city should prioritize this and invest in this area. It's an economic development corridor for that part of town, employment, etc. So I'm not advocating that it should be green.
Thank you. All right, if there are no other comments on that one, moving on to State Route 210. This is the second phase of State Route 210. The first one is in the green section. The second one, which is ADOT's second priority, is in the salmon section. So any comments for that? Can you do one phase and not the other? I guess maybe that's the first question.
Well, no,
Oh, could you point to that on the map? Well, actually, yeah, if you don't mind zoom in.
And on and off.
There we go. That's that little wiggly line next to the
Gotcha.
Air Force property. So again, can you do the first phase but not the second?
so this project is part of a DCR with, I think, a total of 15 projects in it. Design concept report with 15 projects in it. The connection from I-10 to SR 210, I believe, has 3 separate projects in it. These are 2 of them, and they're on the northern end. So putting one of them in really locks in all 3 is an interesting concept. I think it's just vital for the region to move this forward. It's going to provide a connection from I-10 up to SR 210, which will then allow everybody to go into downtown and connect to the city's project for downtown links and really create a whole level of connectivity that the region just hasn't seen, but certainly has been a desire since I've moved here. So I believe this is a very important, regionally important project.
Rod, how come they weren't?
They were.
They were broken into phases or stages, or why are they separate?
No, they were submitted, we submitted the entire corridor as separate individual projects. These were the only 2 that got moved forward from this group when we had that meeting a year ago and everything got whittled down. These were the only 2 that, but ADOT submitted every project in this entire SR 210 corridor as part of the desires for ADOT to move forward, for ADOT projects to move forward.
Different individual projects.
Why were they?
Not to do one project.
That was the part of the implementation plan. So a lot of it, I guess, comes down to funding availability and constructability issues of why they were done that way.
But if you do one, you gotta do them all.
Pretty much.
And I think to clarify one thing, there's 2 projects somewhere along the way that phases 1 and 2 were combined into one project that you see up in the green. So even though there's 2 line item entries, it reflects the 3 phases you're talking about.
And then, just as a reminder, this was the project that we're looking at having ADOT leverage that with a significant amount. And the RTA contribution would be a smaller amount. So just
So
keep that in mind as part of the conversation as well. Yes.
I would like to say that ADOT is marching forward with the project in this DCR. So we already have one project, $500 million project moving forward. We're going to see that coming forward in the next month. It's in the tip right now. It has to get adjusted. And you'll be seeing that as TAG will be seeing that through the tip process very shortly. But that's in there. We're going to be moving 6th forward, Park Avenue forward. So this is the plan for ADOT to march forward, of course, with TAG's, approval of the project sequence. But this whole section of I-10 is the oldest section of I-10. It has our most significant safety issues that we have out there. And that's why ADOT put this whole section forward, because we really do think that this whole section is regionally significant in terms of safety as compared to the northern sections, which have been redone. Granted, there's a lot of cross street issues, but the main line is a lot safer than it is in this area of town.
And again, as a reminder, a $25 million investment from the RTA will guarantee that project will be funded in the future by ADOT.
That's a follow-up question, Rod. So similar to what you were just talking about, what Rod just said, would the same apply to the TIs? That if there was some level of investment from RTA, would prioritize those to receive funding?
It would.
So what's
that
the,
same
I
way.
guess, what's the magic formula there? We put 25 million for SR 210, which is not nearly enough,
Yeah.
but it's enough to demonstrate priority for the region. Could we take a similar approach with the Marana TIs?
I don't know what the, if there is a magic formula for it. There's challenges with, again, the fiscal restraints of the TIP program and so on. There's only so much money in the pot. So if, for example, ADOT is planning to move out 4 projects, that is an ADOT's priority. And then the region decides, no, those projects are not a priority. We want to put this project in. And that means 1 or 2 of those other ones are gone because the pot's only so big. So by putting in a larger value from RTA, you're allowing those other projects to possibly move forward or modify the funding. So it's a regional decision and kind of you have to look at it individually and the priority of the projects. There's no
Well,
magic formula.
Historically, and it's important, and I think most of you know this, if you've worked with ADOT on a traffic interchange, ADOT requires a significant amount of match for improving traffic interchanges. So there is a difference from that perspective. In some cases, 50-50.
We think of it from a regional perspective, then if both of the state Route 210 projects, the one that's in green now and the one that's in salmon is 50 million. So I appreciate the experts saying they're together, right? One that's gonna happen. Money's fungible, and the point you made, the point I was gonna make, which is the more money that RTA can commit to it, that's money that can be used elsewhere. That either the state doesn't have to, or locally, it can project that has different benefits. So in my mind, it lines up regionality as well.
Good, thank you. So again, we'll come back again, but I think there's a understanding that that is a project that should be reconsidered as part of the green section. All right.
Farha, I'm
Yes, go
sorry,
ahead.
can I make a
Sorry,
quick
Brian,
comment
go-
on this project?
Yes, please.
I think State Route 210 is one of the better investments that has been made in Southern Arizona in a long time. This addition, I think, is very important. It takes anyone coming from Rita Ranch, Vale area, and it gives them an opportunity to either reach Davis Mountain or more so into downtown Tucson, where again, there has been significant investment into downtown Tucson to revitalize that and bring in residential and business back into that area. And it's been successful. And this takes it gives people an opportunity to get off Interstate 10, and that area is extremely congested. So it reduces congestion and reduces the potential for accidents and injuries. So I would agree that this project is definitely worth including.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. All right, Sam, next one is the city. You want to hold off and do all those at the same time later? Okay. All right, we'll move on to Pima Mine Road from I-19 to Nogales Highway. That's Sahuarita's second priority. Any comments?
Yeah, this road abuts the Tohono O'odham Nation area. It's a major corridor, an important one for the town. From a local and a regional perspective, in our opinion, we've got major community developments that rely on one of 2 roads for ingress, egress, and access to I-19. Pima Mine Road serves as one of those. So if it were to go out or not be able to handle the demands, it would be a real problem for our community. In addition to that, we've got a major intersection at Pima Mine Road and Nogales Highway that involves the railroad. We can't expand that intersection at all because of the complexities in that area. And so a realignment is part of the consideration for Pima Mine Road project that would free that up. In addition to that, that area serves a major employment corridor for the region. Stakeholders like FICO, ASARCO, we've got the city of Tucson that's really close in that area with their incorporated limits, and the industrial corridor out there with Raytheon and the battery company that just came up online or groundbreaking earlier this week. So this is a really important project for us. We don't anticipate this project being until period 2. We are working with landowners right now to help on the acquisition side, so we can hopefully look to reduce some of the expense on this project. We don't have those firm in commitment right now, but that would be our intent. And then on top of that, so we've got our number 1 project, La Valita, that we would hope to do period 1. We are also working with landowners to dedicate the right of way to help with acquisition costs, which on our projects represent a pretty significant portion of our project expense. So we're hoping to be able to come to the table with ways to shave those costs down quite a bit on our part. But and the last reason that I'll put forward as to why this really ought to be in the green, political viability. Just having one project over the next 20 years just doesn't seem to cut it with my council. So really want to work hard to maintain at least 2 projects in the running. Thanks.
Thank you. And I want to echo on your comment about the San Javier district being immediately to the north. We have over the last 10, 15 years or so working with the Tohono O'odham Nation and San Javier district, worked on bits and pieces of improvements along that road, working with the town, improve the bridge crossing on Santa Cruz. So again, keep that in mind that there's been smaller investments made over time to address some of the issues in that section. So Jen and then Terry. Oh, you had your hand up. I thought maybe. Okay, no, I'm sorry. You did. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out basically what you just said as far as regional stakeholders. The casino's right there, the Tohono O'odham Casino, and they don't have a project on the list. And so, it would be beneficial, as far as the nation's concerned. So, just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Terry, you had your hand up.
Yes, I did, and I'll echo the sentiment, because that was part of what I was gonna say with Jason was talking about there. But additionally, just from the eye test, looking at this project and looking at the map and what's viable, I think it's perhaps not the best, one of the best part of this. The green is that it's already to have, but that one project, and I don't see us getting a lot of salary that have to say both of those projects.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And again, if you recall, during the workshop, we had that discussion. We want to make sure that there is something at least close enough that gets hopefully the constituents excited about the plan, and this might be a good example of that. I'm losing track, but I think I got Carolyn, then Mary, right? Anybody else? And Brian has his hand up again, so then Brian. Go ahead, Carolyn.
I just have a quick question. So as far as the railroad tracks at Nogales Highway, so this project stops before the railroad tracks? It goes over the railroad tracks?
It involves that intersection as well as all the way over to I-19. But what we've been planning to do as part of this project is to realign that intersection, to take it off of that area where the railroad is, and working with the Sarco, which is the major property owner to the north of Pima Mine Road. We would realign Pima Mine to curve northward and then intersect Nogales Highway slightly to the north to avoid that railroad crossing.
So the map online doesn't reflect that, but we got that information incorporated into the cost estimates, the description that we were doing with the detailed efforts with the jurisdictions. So Shane's description is correct, and that's what we're carrying, and just hasn't caught up on the map yet. But that would be on any future materials going forward.
But eventually, somebody going north, if they're gonna go east, they're gonna come into conflict with the railroad tracks further.
Folks driving north and south on Nogales Highway would still cross the railroad. But having a railroad inside of the intersection makes it very, very difficult to do.
Okay, thanks.
All right, I have Mary, then Brian. Go ahead, Mary.
Oh, I just wanted to make a comment, real small comment that I totally support what you're saying about sorry, only having 2. Also the 210, I mean, to me, it's just only logic. So my voice will definitely be heard in the CAC on those two issues and some of these other ones we're talking about, because if we don't look at how many projects are in each jurisdiction, I think we're wasting all of our time.
Thank you, appreciate that. Brian, you're next.
I just want to echo all the comments that are made. I do believe this is important to ease the traffic in that area, but also I don't feel like it's appropriate for Sarita to only have the one project. They didn't come with a lot of asks to begin with. And if we want to get broad voter support, I think this project goes a long way to getting that.
Thank you, Brian. Again, summarizing, I believe there's support for making sure that this project is also at the green section and not salmon. Moving on to the next project, Thornydale Road, that's Pima County's third priority. And between Cotero and Tangerine Road.
We absolutely would like this to be moved up into the green. Obviously, this has been identified for widening for 20 years. We think it supports a lot of the activity going on. As you all know, and we've discussed, there's significant development going on in that area. I think this is a project that helps the county, but also in the Oro Valley, Marana area as well, as we see expansion in that area. You have seen, you look at all of the description related to it, you'll also see bicycle, pedestrian, and some of those improvements as well. I think this is what's serving out in the Mountain View High School area as well. So it provides a lot of different service in many areas, serving a variety of communities. We see it as quite regional for that purpose, and would support it being moved into green.
Appreciate it.
Let me turn to, we call it the phone a friend from Pima County. What did we miss? Thank you.
All right, and I think Terry and then Brian, and then I'll echo what just Jan said. For the last 25 years or so, Thornydale comes up in every conversation, similar to Cotero traffic interchange. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that Thornydale has been vocal for a very long time about traffic on there. I'll also go back to the point that made by Brian Keeley earlier about Einer Road and its east-west connection that it provides. I think Thornydale does the same south. Not only does it go all the way to the very right into the mountains there, but it goes south, connects into river, and river connects all the way to the east. So literally drive from the far east side of town and drive all the way up to the north side of town using river and Thornydale. So I think project needs to be moved up.
Thank you. I had Brian, but Brian, was that from before? All right.
It probably was, but you could assume I have comments on everything because I usually do. And so the one piece I'll just echo on this is not only the congestion, but the safety. And when safety comes to mind, I think about Mountain View High School. There have been significant vehicle pedestrian incidents in that intersection over the years, especially during school time. Friday night football is a massive problem. And I know we don't want to focus on just a couple hours, but I think it just echoes how much congestion can get on that road, and the road's really not equipped to handle it as it currently stands. So widening sidewalks, bicycle routes, all of that would be beneficial to all modes of traffic for that area.
Thank you, Brian. Chris?
And I'll offer a counterpoint. Because the comments that have said, which is that, oh, this is then we've been talking about this for 25 years. Well, why hasn't it been done? And why should regional money go to it? County money, county right away. And it's been such a big priority for talking about it for 25 years. I bring that up because we're in the part where, okay, that's $40 million. What comes out? It supplants of one or two other projects. And what we've been talking about already, I don't see it supplanting any of those. So I think we have to remember that, yeah, we've been talking about it for 25 years. Okay. But does it and should it rise to the green over something else? That's what's going to happen with CAC. Right. So I just offer that as I'm not hearing a convincing argument as to its regionality, it's gonna get us more votes, which I have a point on that we'll talk about later. But I also think that we should be viewing RT regional money that all the communities contribute to as solving a problem that is clear priority, but it should be a problem for another entity. So that's all I have.
And if I may.
James, ready, go.
No, but I think, and someone can help me with this, but I believe that part of the concern is that regional money for RTA, regional money was pulled from this in order to support other, other projects, which is why it hasn't been done. So I think what we're looking at is if money that has been dedicated to this project previously was pulled for it to accommodate other projects, then we would hope that we could look to this project, to this next batch of RTA funding to be able to finally make it so.
That's a good argument to make if that actually happened. Yeah.
So yeah, if I may clarify that, other regional dollars were previously committed to this project, but because of RTA projects, those dollars were shifted to RTA
It's not in
project,
current RTA, it's other regional dollars.
To make,
ag
to make
dollars.
current RTA projects
But
possible.
again, another point, this is county's
My
third,
point for me.
this is county's third
Ow.
priority.
All right.
Terry,
So I think, if we're looking strictly at this list here, versus what the TNC did, here, and what we had in terms of priorities, safety was higher than modernization. So on this list here, there's a whole bunch of modernization projects that, in my opinion, would have to get bumped in favor of prioritization for safety. Right, so Thornydale is certainly a safety issue as it's currently constructed over something that may be a modernization project where we're adding sidewalks and making it more pretty. So I would absolutely say that there are projects above in the green currently on this list right here that could and should be bumped in favor of something like Thornydale.
so
I'm sorry, just a quick question. Again,
Yeah.
which of the different categories above modernization is safety? Because it doesn't say so. Is it capacity enhancement, operational?
let me respond to that. So if you recall, we broke down those projects in different categories. You had operational improvements. So I think you can include operational improvements with safety, but then capacity improvements, and we've talked about this before, every single capacity improvement will also have safety improvements.
So if you
included.
actually read at the very top here under capacity management, these are projects, are larger projects that reconstruct the roadway to provide additional capacity to improve safety,
Yep.
reduce congestion, and improve mobility.
So again, and I thank you for that, but I just want to make sure, especially for the public, the audience, that information has been discussed in the past, that every single RTA project will address safety concerns as they are being designed and implemented.
Right, just like with modernization. Those are all ones. I mean, I think they're all like safety.
All right, so if I may, it looks like we probably have some level of understanding on Thornydale that should be considered. And I would even piggyback that with the next project, which is Shannon Road. Shannon Road being Oro Valley's first priority. And they are pretty similar in characteristics and needs. So I don't know if Jeff, you want to make an argument for it, but I think based on previous comments made, your first priority should be considered.
I'm not gonna argue with anybody, but but it is our first priority. And if we looked at this from a regional standpoint, if you look at the road, it's actually on our western border and only a portion of our western border. So that's why we saw this as helping unincorporated as well as Marana, helps the northern flow. And as you can see, it extends down into the southern area, which is not even our area. We were willing to put in $1 million on both of our projects. So that's where we were contributing dollars to regional projects that help the whole flow. As you know, you've said it before, I-10, if it's not on I-10, it's on Oracle. So we got to increase our north-south corridors that are in between there. And this is one of those. So this will extend all the way up to Tangerine.
And that's why the Tangerine improvements are improved. So it's all a network, but this will allow, we feel, another capacity. It's not under the capacity category, but it definitely is increasing capacity. There's some safety components. And then the Naraha, it also helps east-west because it does connect the Naraha, where right now they would only be able to go south. Now they'll be able to go north. So those are just a few points.
No, appreciate that. Thank you. Any other comments? Again, I think they're pretty similar from checking boxes, regionality, regional priority, jurisdictional priority. Go ahead.
I mean, I just keep asking questions because we're not taking very many, we haven't taken anything out except the one Marana project.
Well, if I may, I just want to make sure that the exercise wasn't to pick
No, I
and choose. It was
know.
to acknowledge the challenge.
Exactly, right? So Shannon and Thornydale are what, a mile apart? Is that right? So wouldn't it be advantageous to do one or the other, even though they're two different jurisdictions that are, I just haven't heard why we need both.
That's either for Jeff or Jan to comment on. Be happy to give you the regional perspective as well, but anybody else wants to respond to
Go
that?
ahead.
I think just in that area, I mean, especially with the Tangerine, all that, well, Tangerine, I think having the two corridors is helpful. But again, I go back to the east-west, the Naraha especially, it's, you're gonna go south. And this allows them to go north, so it adds to the flow. I think we're trying to look at the future, not just what's here now, in a 20-year plan. Although I will say we're ready. I mean, both projects that we have, that's why we put the $1 million in reach. We can accomplish these. So, and I'm not sure if all the projects that are currently listed up above are necessarily ready to go either.
Okay. Any other comments on that? And then again, I would echo that planning for the future. These corridors currently are under capacity. Can you imagine over the next 20 years if we don't plan for them?
And I think
Also, it's gonna be difficult for people in Rural Valley to support without this project. I don't see you getting the support. So again, looking at the regionality, looking at it being viable from capacity and getting votes. Rural Valley doesn't have these two projects. Frankly, I think people in Rural Valley are gonna find one.
But and quite honestly, that's one of the challenges we will have, because both of our projects are on the edges of our jurisdiction and looked upon to help the region. So we still have our work to cut out for us, but you're right. I mean, just one project, just like Sarita, makes it difficult.
Thank you. I think I had Tom
Yeah, I just wanted to
and then Jan.
ask again, the question came up during the CAC meeting about the relative priorities and confirming that this was number one and that Lambert was number two. And from what I've heard, that continues to be the case. Great.
All right, Kelly.
So he doesn't want to fight with anybody, so I'm not gonna ask him. My question was, would he put Shannon instead of Thornydale? I mean, which one, do you think that's more important with Thornydale?
I think it's both important. I'm not gonna negotiate against myself.
And I think when we're looking at this, part of it is the safety issue. You got, while we both, I think, need to be widened, you do have some safety issues dealing with the two completely separate schools in those areas.
All right, so again, I think that, like I said before, we're not picking and choosing or anything, but at least the 5 projects, Tangerine TI, SR 210, Pima Mine Road, Thornydale Road, and Shannon Road. I think there is some level of support for those to be considered as part of the green and not salmon. So if I'm misreading that, please, let's have a conversation on that. If not, no, we can go back to the city projects as Sam requested. We can talk about those. And again, this exercise is, do they belong in the salmon or green? So please go ahead in whatever order you like. Tell us which ones you believe should be in the green section on this list.
Okay, I'm gonna take a little different approach and present the city's prioritization holistically.
Can you please, let's finish this exercise first and then we'll come back.
And I'm not gonna complete the exercise until we present our priority.
Okay, we can come back to that. Okay, any other comments on this exercise?
So we just talked about the salmon today, not.
Well, no, we'll move on again, but again, the purpose was to provide feedback to CAC members as well as to the full CAC, which projects that this group believes should be considered, right? And the takeaway is that those 5 projects should be considered. Is that is a correct understanding of everybody, that that's the feedback to the CAC? All right, so that was that exercise. And as you all discussed earlier, we're not going to talk about the selection sheet. We're just going to focus on the ranking sheet. So we'll skip that. Now we want to move on to the framework. And the framework was mentioned several times by several folks, and I want to recap the whole purpose of the framework. You have that in front of you as well. So on the framework, if you all recall, this group made a recommendation and the TMC approved the recommendation. CAC even approved the recommendation earlier in June. And shortly after that, we finalized our cost estimates, and the cost estimates are now reflected on this worksheet. And they are significantly higher to a tune of, what is it? $372 million. That's on the bottom, on the second sheet in red. So just looking at the cost estimate alone, we're still looking at $372 million to shave from this list to at least bring it back to a fiscally constrained budget. So with that, any comments? If not, I'll go to Sam next, but I just want to make sure that we'll have that conversation within the context of this framework. Yes.
We take a little time to look at the revenue projections.
Sure.
Can we do that
Of
now
course.
or?
Of course, yeah.
And then what they were over the last 20 and
Yep.
then the.
Yep. So I'll fast forward to a couple months ago. So a couple months ago, we went to the board, we had the conversation with the board, and the board agreed that based on our historical revenue and based on our projections into the future, that we should continue to use a pessimistic revenue projection for the next 20 years. And that amounts to $2.34 billion of RTA revenues for 20 years at the half-cent tax rate. Several different reasons for that. Main reason for that was that back in 2006, we used the baseline revenue projection. And shortly after that, we hit the recession and then construction cost increases. So we are being a little bit more cautious with the revenue projections.
Right.
And the 2.34 is approved by the board to use for this exercise.
And then over the last 20 years, we generated how many? How many?
To date, we are projecting 1.7 billion instead of 2.1 that was initially projected.
Okay.
1.7 actually is more closely aligned with the pessimistic scenario instead of the baseline scenario for the previous RTA as well. Any other questions on the revenue side? All right, with that, again, framework is in front of you. We have highlighted the ranking exercise that this group did. Everything you see, again, we tried to use the same shading theme. Anything you see in green falls within the 1.1 budget. Anything you see in kind of salmon orange does not fall within the budget. And we're still at 37.2 over the TMC approved framework. So with that, any comments? If not, I'll turn it to Sam. Nope, no comments? Go ahead, Sam.
We've got a spreadsheet we're gonna pass out, and then I think it's electronic. If you want to pull it up for those online. So as that spreadsheet's going around, I'll kind of just set the stage for what we'll review today. Many of you know that our mayor and council directed us to put together a prioritized list of all the city's priorities for RTA Next, not just the location specific projects. So I believe about 2 weeks ago at mayor and council, the city manager presented our draft prioritized project list. It's prioritized holistically. So really it's broken down into 4 categories: transit, safety, pavement, and location specific projects. And once the spreadsheet gets around, I'll kind of walk everybody through this. The approach that we took was we took the pessimistic revenue projection, 4 billion. We subtracted the deferred projects from that total. And then we assumed a 65% target investment. And that was a number we needed in order to be able to put this prioritized list together to have something to shoot for. We also accounted for the city's share of the administrative costs. So you'll see that at the bottom of the list and kind of the green color there. There are 2 red lines, and I'll explain what those are, and they'll become more important here. The first red line is that 4.37 billion pessimistic revenue projection. The second is just other location specific projects the city has beyond that. And the idea there is that if the pessimistic revenue projections come in higher, that we've got alternative projects that we can start working down the list. So let me walk you through the priority, and then obviously I'll be happy to answer any questions. So the first on the first page here, the first 6 projects in the dark blue and light blue are transit projects. The first 5 are continuation of existing historical transit service that's currently being funded out of RTA Next. I'm sorry, our 2006 RTA plan. The 6th project is new transit service, and that's expansion of weekday, evening frequency, and that is based mainly on the feedback we heard during the comprehensive operational analysis. So the first 6 projects are the city's top priorities for RTA Next funding, mainly because we want to maintain that existing level of service. RTA. The next 2 projects are more categorical. They're safety elements. Priority number 7 is the pedestrian and bicycle safety and walkability improvements. You'll see that that's a total of about 105 million. The project lists there are projects that we would consider under this category. It represents roughly half of that total, leaving the other half as to be for future projects that come up over the life of the 20 years. The 8th priority project is traffic signal technology upgrades. This is to complement the investment we're making in Proposition 411, upgrade all the traffic signals across the city. Prop 411 covers about half of the city. This $30 million investment covers the other half. The new category here that most of you have not seen discussed as part of RTA Next is pavement rehabilitation. And so what we did is we set aside $200 million for pavement rehabilitation. Those roadways listed there are federally classified principal arterial streets. I think I presented on this at the CAC a few weeks ago. These were selected primarily because they have the highest traffic volumes in the city. Many of these do traverse outside of the city limits, or they begin outside. We went ahead in the spreadsheet you have, you'll see the bolded roadways are those that have the 2006 RTA plan projects on them. And the idea here is that we would come back and either do a mill and overlay or even a reconstruct on these roadways over the life of the 20-year plan. This is not for routine maintenance. This is not filling potholes and crack sealing. This is full-on rehab of those roadways. And then after that, you have 10 through 26 are all of our location-specific projects ranked again in priority. And so when we were going through that previous exercise, you asked me about Campbell. Campbell is one of our higher ranked location specific projects. But in our holistic approach, it's number 15 on the list here. There are a few new projects that currently aren't being discussed as part of the named category here. Most notably, the bus rapid transit project is considered a location specific project, not within the transit category. We have also, you'll see that Marianne Cleveland Way is included on this prioritization list. There was some discussion, I think last year, we were talking about whether it was Fossil Cave and Marianne Cleveland Way. Our priority is Marianne Cleveland Way, and we would certainly look to our partners at the county on if we want to continue that out beyond the city limits. Glenwood County also had a Marianne Cleveland Way project on the list at some point. And then rounding out this list are our two Greenway projects, Airport Wash and Rob Wash. And then you see the remainder of our location specific projects. And again, these are in ranked priority. So if you want to ask what the city's priorities are, you'll see them listed here. Now back to those two red lines. Obviously, we're going off a pessimistic revenue projection. Our thought process here is that if the revenues come in higher, then we have projects that we just start working down the list. If the revenues come lower, then we just start working up the list in reverse order, because this is our entire priority as a city. And so really just work from the bottom up. The other thing I'll mention on that too is that these categories could also be contracted as well. And so as if the revenues are lower, or if the city's investment is lower than the 1.37 billion, then we could contract these categories to be able to fit more location specific projects on the total list. So again, we presented this to mayor and council. We have got their feedback, and this represents the city's holistic needs as a community for RTA Next. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Kevin.
So you don't have different categories in different orders, like there might be a location specific after a transit and then after, I mean, it's just all by the bigger categories, or your categories are kind of your priorities.
Yes and no. So it just turned out that the way that we ranked our priorities are both in category and projects. So yeah, we don't have a location specific project ahead of our transit service. Transit service entirely is our top priority in this holistic list. So it really was individual projects, but also
And then follow up in the transit, continuation of RTA 1 transit improvements. This isn't the whole improvement, it's the improvement part that stops the city boundary.
That's correct. That's an important distinction. This is the transit service in the city. Same, yeah, the new transit service as well.
Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, the total I see for the transit service is 453 million, if my addition is right. How does that compare with the 510 million, I think, that the TMC had originally proposed for transit regionally? I recognize this is city only, as you just said, but can you give us an idea of, is the city 90% or 50% of the region in your view?
Yeah, that's a good question, Tom. I think we have done some of that analysis. I don't have it at my fingertips right now. We could do the math. 453 out of 510.
Yeah, we did get some information. The CAC did get some information from various, Suntran and the working group as well. And I think the numbers don't quite jive, so I just would like to get clarification on that.
Yeah, Tom, I do think we should do some more work on that. I would expect there would be additional investment in transit beyond this 443, and so we have to figure out what that investment, where that investment is. Because there is a existing transit service in the current plan outside the city limits that's likely not accounted for in this 443.
Any other questions?
I do have another one. If you can say the different categories, safety. I'm not sure I want to ask you about pavement rehabilitation, but in these others, would you want to see these projects listed in the safety, for example, element?
Yeah, that's a great question, Carolyn, and that was our intent, is that we provided both specificity and flexibility in this safety category. Now, recognizing that we have to put a plan in front of our mayor and council that they can support. What we're finding is that the needs across the community are different, and so we have some areas that need location-specific projects. But as you look in the safety elements here, you can see there are some projects that are needed across the different ports in the city, but don't necessarily rise to the level of a location-specific project. So the idea here is that we are telling our city voters that this investment is citywide, whether it's location-specific or a bike boulevard or a hawk, that we are addressing all the needs of the community program.
Well, I got another question
Go ahead.
that leads me to, let's say that half of these safety projects make it onto the list for the top half. I know how the city words, or that, yes, I mean, do they each, like, if half of them, are they in all different wards if it cuts it off at a certain, or would they all be in like Ward 1, or if it was just half of them?
I would think I guess I think what you're asking is this inner list kind of prioritized within that safety element? I don't know for sure. I would think that we, in fact, we're doing the work now. We're putting some dollars behind these, and we can certainly prioritize within this category to make sure that, like I said, if we can track this category from 1 to 5 to some smaller number for what falls off, we would certainly do the prioritization exercise.
So Sam, I'm gonna ask the same, within, you prioritize down the one side, but within those small sections, that still has to be done.
Yeah,
Rank those in, if I'm.
it's really just that safety element. Where I think that the idea with pavement rehabilitation, which is the other one that has kind of additional listed locations. The idea is that all of those federally classified principal arterials would be touched in that 20. That's all of them for the city of Tucson.
Got it.
Go ahead.
Just a question for you. Where are we with pavement rehabilitation? We've talked about that in different ways.
Sure. We've had a discussion with the RTA board. We had a legal framework that was presented to the board. And the board actually made a motion that only projects that are considered for reconstruction would be eligible. Anything that is not required for reconstruction will not be eligible. And by reconstruction, it'll be poor or worse condition.
Okay, so rehabilitation, reconstruction, no, it's not the same.
Case by case, it has to be eligible as a poor or worse condition to be eligible.
And does the city
Yeah,
go
go
through
ahead.
that? What's this? Oh,
We,
condition.
yeah, I think we do have the OCI for all of these roadways, and you know, we definitely took a look at that legal opinion from the RTA. The RTA's counsel indicated that pavement had to be a well-defined plan, that it couldn't be a slush fund. We wholeheartedly agree with that. And that's why we very specifically designated these roadways that are principal arterials that need a higher level of pavement rehabilitation, not just a simple road.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll be honest, I'm struggling a little bit with this because I'm trying to bifurcate the projects with process. And having, I got to figure out how, I'm having initial response to Holy Toledo. It's like people have been working together for a couple of years and we've done a lot of work as a TMC. We worked with the CAC, we've come together with RTA, and now we got a whole new scope in front of us. And balancing that with then an inability to delve through that and kind of look at what those projects are. So how can I evaluate, I'm trying to figure out how to evaluate it without it being stepped on by my response to process. And don't know whether then what this means now is just a timeout. I mean, the TMC TMC's got a plan, right? And we're not meeting here today as the TMC, so that stays intact, if you will. But if the suggestion then here is, I go back to Pima County and say, okay, let's take all the money and put everything back together and reshake it and come back with a whole new plan. Is that where we are? And is that where we want to go? And I'm also not going to say, so I'm just saying out, where are we in the process and where do we go with this? And I also don't want to say we're going to give up a good projects that maybe are the right things to go to the voters because the process has been in place. On the other hand, it really just feels like 11th hour. And how do we reevaluate this? Is it good news that we all can go back and look at taking the buckets and shaking them up and bringing the new plan forward or not? I guess is.
If you don't mind, I got Brian and then Shane and then Mary. Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you. Actually, this is a conversation I've been looking forward to having. So there's a lot of conversation at the CAC about increasing the transit buckets, putting more money into transit, transit being a priority over roadway projects and potentially removing roadway projects. Unfortunately, when we do the ranking, some of the roadways that get removed are outside city limits. They're in the other jurisdictions. And yet most of the transit benefits the city. So what I would ask the city is back to the project the process we just completed is if transit is your highest priority and you were given your transit wishes, would you support some of the city projects that were in the green being removed and allowing some of those salmon projects that we just discussed that we feel are important around the region to replace those projects?
Thanks for that question, Brian. I think that the answer to that would be that we would look to our prioritized project list based on the direction from our mayor and council. And so we would, if I understand correctly, if you're saying change for the transit, what location specific projects would we give up? Well, I think that if you look at our holistic approach to our prioritization, we would just work from the bottom of our project. We would just work from the bottom of the list. That was our approach to this.
But I do understand correctly that transit is the #1 priority for the city of Tucson. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, our top 5 priorities in this project list are the continuation of existing connectivities.
So seeing that transit's important and that your top 5 are a continuation. I mean, my fear here is if we don't get the broad support from the region by including the projects in Oro Valley or Sarita or some of these other areas, and if this plan doesn't pass, then you lose the existing funding for your top 5 projects. That is also correct, if I understand. I'm looking for clarification on that.
I quite understand the question.
If I may answer the question, yes.
Okay.
Risk.
Yeah. All right, I think I had Shane, Mary, and then Terry. Go ahead, Shane.
I just want to dovetail on Jan's comments. Where's the city been throughout this whole process? And I say that with the utmost respect. And I know that there's been whether it's been vocalized or it's communicated through nonverbal cues. I recognize that the city has wrestled along the way with the procedure that has been played out, but if we're truly have consigned ourselves to a regional approach, and we're looking at this regionally, how do we jive the work that we've done over the last over a year. And now, I mean, what message is being sent by the city? And if you could answer that question for me before I can even wrap my head around how to move all this in. I mean, the introduction of now maintenance, no other organization, no other agency has put that on the table because quite frankly, it didn't seem to be, you know, didn't seem to be something that was palatable. But if it is, then that's something that we need to wrestle with as well as a region. It made sense to me that it wasn't, so that we could put our focus on actually enhancing traffic circulation and congestion and making, you know, putting dollars towards safety issues. But if we're going to introduce now a maintenance component, I think that kind of turns things upside down a little bit. But please respond. I really want to know, I mean, what is the message that the city is sending to the region in this exercise? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. I think the first question you asked is where is the city been along the way here? You know, we've been talking about this linear approach, only looking at the roadway projects first, and then after that, we'll get to the other category. And I think this is an exercise that we have been wanting for a while, so that we could look at the plan holistically. That's what this represents, the city's holistic approach to transportation investment in the community. But again, back to where the city has been, Shane, if you go back to the draft framework, the city voted no. We supported the framework, even though the TMC passed it, the city representatives on the we didn't agree with that framework to begin with. We did get direction from mayor and council to put together this holistically prioritized plan. And so that's what we've done. I think, you know, the pavement category is up for discussion. I think we can all acknowledge that there's not enough money in the region for pavement preservation. And so, you know, if there's an opportunity to use RTA Next, potential way to address some of the pavement concerns throughout the community, you know, I think we should have that discussion.
So if I might, just before we. So if I understand this correctly, and I do note and acknowledge the fact that we've gone through an exercise, and as a TMC, a vote was put forward, and I recognize the nay vote from the city. But is this the city not wanting to acknowledge the vote and do things your own way, or are we still at the table and we're still trying to move forward with a regional plan?
Yeah, we're not at all. Are we?
I mean, I hope you respect. I am respectful. I recognize.
Understand, Shane. I will. The attempt here is to look at it holistically. To look at this from a different perspective.
We started holistically at the beginning.
Well,
as a big work group, throwing all the projects on the table, and then
the projects though, Shane, not the categories, not transit. You know, we tried to have a conversation about our transit capital projects, but we're not going to talk about that until we get here. What we're saying is this is the city's priority across the spectrum for our community in totality. Now let's have a conversation about how we make it work for the region. I know, frankly, I think everyone should do this exercise themselves. What is your jurisdiction's needs holistically beyond just the main roadway projects?
Thank you.
All right, I think I had Mary and Terry and Brian, your hand is up again.
Shane already asked the question.
Jane asked the question. Thank you. Terry, you're up, and then Brian, if you still have your hand up. And then Jan.
So I'm gonna jump on the county and Sahuarita bandwagon here on this. It feels like this takes us in a totally different direction. And I understand what the city is trying to do, and I realize that the city has a much different situation than the rest of us. the city of Tucson isn't growing in the same way that Sahuaritas and the Oro Valley and the Maranas are growing. And a lot of the projects you have are modernization projects. A number of them don't add any capacity to their modernization, even taking away, reducing roadways. So I'll share Shane's question and concern about the pavement rehabilitation. I just don't see how that's for regional thing. I mean, to Chris's point earlier, we're thinking strictly about what is regional. I don't see that pavement preservation is. And I understand why some of these things, there's some significant projects in here, but nonetheless, they're rehabilitation. I think that Ryan's point earlier about the priority for the town being transit related, if that's where the priority is, then I think that the city would need to be willing to eliminate some of those road projects in favor of putting more money toward transit. But I'm confused how this helps to advance us from where we're at right now. It feels like it takes us in a totally different direction. I'm also curious if the city at any point has the desire or intent to begin to charge for the transit service, or the intent is to keep them free. Because I think that's a dollar amount, obviously, that impacts the bottom line here on those top 5 priorities, right? Because these are existing services that are being provided right now, and they're being provided for free. So does charging something for those services in any way offset some of that? So I realize that probably have a lot of questions in there. But I think it's because I'm just kind of confused by where we're going with this.
Terry, if I could respond to your transit questions, the dollar amounts here represent the existing investment in transit from RTA, irrespective of whether or not we charge fares.
Okay.
All right, I think I had Jan and Brian. Let me know if you had a question. If not, I don't see your hand up anymore.
A comment and then a question, if I may. And I do think that throughout this process, some of us have said, what we've all said at some point, it is tough when we draw a real hard line. And we've said it's difficult to say we're going to do name projects and then lock it and never come back to it as we move on. So I understand, some of the concept of looking at this in the budget, because we've all talked about that at some point. But as I say, it just yikes. My question is, and I'm sorry, Sam, I'm sure you said it and I missed it. How do you come up with the 1 billion, what the red line, the
Yeah.
1,000,000,037?
Sure, thanks, Jan. So what we did is we took the 2.34 billion. That's the pessimistic revenue projection that was approved by the RTA board. We subtracted the 4 deferred projects. And then we just took 65%.
And the 4 deferred projects.
Our 22nd Street, Houghton, First Avenue, and
Silverbell.
So we subtracted those, and then 65% of the remaining.
65%.
5%.
All right, any other questions or comments? If not, I know a few folks had mentioned that they need to.
Closing.
Yeah, look,
Sorry, I forgot to mention this. We'll send a formal copy of this to the. Basically summarizing the presentation I gave today. So I just wanted to let you know that'll be coming.
I have a simple question. So, do any of these projects in the safety pavement rehabilitation replace named projects, corridor projects from before, in the way that the city had moved La Cholla and 22nd Street from the named corridors to a named, can't remember, I think in a couple of categories. But you moved them, so are there any like that in these categories that are no longer on your corridor projects because they're specific safety or pavement?
No. To answer your question, that's a good question. No, these are new projects, I guess you could say. And I would also mention too that projects 10 through 26 don't exactly reconcile with what's in this project list. There are a few new projects. I think our expectation is that this is going to be our prioritized project list.
Okay, I got a couple questions, Jan, Tom.
I just want to clarify, I'm trying to understand that picture. So there are new projects that we've not seen before that have not been on the table. Okay.
Yeah, just, excuse me, a quick question about number 10, Drexel Bridge. I've been hearing, and some of that's been reported through our CAC, that there's quite a bit of controversy within certain parts of the neighborhood surrounding that area about that project. Is that a project that's going to become kind of a lightning rod?
I haven't heard that, Tom. We are just starting design on that. I'm certain that once we get down the path, there will be some conversations with the neighborhoods, but not like, will it delay the project? Is that your concern?
I just want to find out if it's Snyder Road number 2.
I guess we'll see. Time will
Okay.
tell.
All right, thanks.
Okay, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeff, and then Terry.
Ask, can staff take with the city and Don and mark what's new, mark what actually is in the
I believe they attempted to do that. There's a column back here that has an X in front of anything that is consistent with the current framework. And then if there's no X in front of it, it's not consistent with the current framework. I believe it's the column, it's the last column, but broken down under 5 columns. So if you see an X in front of it, that means it's consistent with the current framework. If there's no X, it's not.
That's not correct, Mark.
That's the way I read it.
That's incorrect.
Okay.
So the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categories on the last 5 columns, what we did is the existing framework, and we checked off where those projects would fall within that framework. So yes, but it doesn't say what's a new project or what's not a new project. It just tells you that that Drexel Road could be considered multimodal, active, or safety. We could fall under any one of those 3 categories. Addresses those 3 categories. Let's see what's Lachoya is considered multimodal, active mode, safety, and environmental. So we try to do is reconcile our list with the categorical elements to show where there's some overlap.
Okay, we'll
We'll
try to translate that.
I'm just kind of at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll try to
How do I
translate it.
reconcile all
All right, Terry.
So Sam, on the 1.371, we decided that that's 65% of the total.
That's correct. Of the total pessimistic revenue minus the project.
Okay. And so then this has to include all the categorical funds. Correct.
It includes
It's
Okay.
the whole,
5% of the whole.
thing. So then, yeah, so I guess I would have another concern about this, and that concern would be that the whole point in having the categoricals is to have them available over the lifetime of the plan, not to identify now where all the monies are going, right? Because over the course of 20 years, we're all gonna have projects that come up that we're going to want to make application for those monies. But if we identify now, okay, the city is gonna get 1.3715 of all the monies, and the rest of the jurisdictions are left with the 1 billion, then all of the roadway projects are gonna, and there's nothing left in categorical. There's nothing left for the environmental project. If we want a bridge over Twin Peaks for the animals, or we want something else, that money's not there because we're putting it all into this right here. And I don't know, I just, the more I'm getting my head around what this is, the more I have concern about it. That's where I'm at right now.
All right, I think I got Tom and then Shane and then Rod. Go.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that as of now, the CAC is continuing with the framework that's been developed, and that's the process that we're following. This information will help us in and can be used in that procedure, those procedures that we're undertaking. As an example, within transit, the question that I asked before is how does this fit into what the total is? Because we've been looking at numbers between 690 million and 510 million as allocation for that category, the transit category. In the safety elements, we've talked about naming some safety projects, and a couple of them that the city had proposed earlier reside there. See if I can remember.
La Cholla and 22nd Street.
La Cholla
And
and
22nd.
and 22nd, yeah. So this also gives us, an idea if we want to name more to put in there or if we don't. But this allows us to see what the priorities are for the city's use of that money. The pavement rehab, I think, is a big issue that has to be decided elsewhere. Whether there's going to be another category added here, which can certainly take away from at least one or two of the other categories if we were to create that. But then with the name projects, by having them in this order, it's going to be helpful to us. I think it'll allow us to see that these are the projects that are the most important as far as the city's concerned. We're hearing and know from previous work that you've done as individual jurisdictions what your own priorities are. And then we're hearing, kind of today how those might fit together, how regionality needs to feed into it. So overall, this is information, and it'd be valuable to us whether the TMC and the board decides to start over with the formatting of this whole plan or not. So I just thought I'd throw that out.
All right.
We're happy to attend the next CAC meeting and go. Last time I gave kind of a broad overview, but we're happy.
Logistics for a second. I believe a couple of people said they had to leave by 10:30. So if you don't mind, let us finish this conversation and then we'll check again. I think it was Shane, Rod, Jason, and then Jeff. Go ahead.
I want to echo Tom's comments, Sam. Information is always helpful. The fact that the city has gone through the exercise of actually identifying main projects, regardless of whether it's a corridor project or a categorical type project, I think information is always helpful. So from that regard, I appreciate this. Because this has already been processed with your council, you've gotten approval from council to represent this. Is it like this is what needs to happen, or is it this for the highway kind of thing, Sam? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I quite frankly have a lot of difficulties, and I think we probably all do, where we've got councils that take action, and there's always, when it's not a 7-0 type outcome, you've got people on the council that might be a little frustrated because they didn't get their way on the vote. But for them to continue to live in that and not move on, procedurally, we had adopted as a board and then as a TMC a process to take action and to advance recommendations to our regional council. I'm just seeing a potential train wreck, and I want to have a conversation about what that looks like, because I think we're all around the table. I think we're all have put our time in to avoid the train wreck, right? And maybe it's the 900-pound elephant, in the room, but I feel like we owe it to ourselves to have frank, candid conversations about where we're heading. Sam, is there any enlightenment that you can provide this group in terms of, again, back to the messaging of what the city is doing right now to this regional group as we try to advance a regional answer to the question, how are we going to spend an RTA next bond if we're going to do it? And politics matters. I mean, you know, I can tell you that if I went back to my council and I said, hey, council, this is a take it or leave it from the city, I'm in trouble. I mean, I'm not going to be able to get that across the finish line. And so I really don't know what the message is that the city is sending to this group by introducing an exercise like this at this hour of the day. And after all that we've gone through as a group, we took action, we prioritized, we did the best we could. There was a lot of conversation, a lot of process. And the city didn't get exactly what it was looking for. But in terms of prioritized projects, clearly the city got the lion's share of the money. And I'm just trying to figure out what the message is that I need to take back to my council. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the message, Jane, is that the direction the council has given us is to look at this as a holistic plan, not just the named projects like we've been doing. Spent so much time talking about your project, my project, their project. We all have needs. They're all different. We should acknowledge that. So, you know, we've asked to try to have this more global view of the plan, and we haven't been able to get that. So the council directed us to put together the city's priorities all together from A to Z. I think getting caught up on is this take it or leave it. Absolutely not. We're here, you know, having a conversation. There's a lot of discussion about to happen. And what we've done is created a project list that we can work off of it. If it's not 1.37, if it's 1 billion, then we just work up our list. I mean, we've got our priorities and they're ready to go.
Thank you.
All right, I had Rod, Jason, and then Jeff.
Thank you. I have just a kind of a point that I want to put out there regarding the 65%. As ADOT as a jurisdiction, where would we fit into a calculation like that, considering that we have a vast majority of the regional road, not a vast majority, but you know, the interstates and, you know, a huge collection system for the region, yet no tax revenue and no population exists on ours. So we have no opportunity to be measured in a calculation such as that. I just wanted to put that out there.
Thanks, Rod. I think it's, you know, that the 65% to me is less important than the prioritization exercise we went through. In order to do that prioritization exercise, we use 65. That's so. This is the city's needs. Across all categories.
All right, I think I got Jason, Jeff, and then Terry.
Sam answered my question.
Okay. Thank you.
We're at 65%.
Thank you. And I can add to that later. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I appreciate the information. It's all helpful. And we all have capital plans. We could have all brought these in and, you know, ours could be this thick, you know, as far as what our capital needs are. And it's good. I mean, I think it's a great process. We do this too. It's just, this is not necessarily the form we would bring all of our capital projects to the RTA. And as far as pavement preservation, boy, if we could have lists for that too. I guess the city, possibly you have a hard charge to manage expectations, because I don't see, let's lay it out there. I don't see a support of pavement preservation. I think it's very difficult for this funding source to be justified for that. That would be difficult. So I just wanted to lay that out. I mean, we're called the Regional Transit Authority or Transportation Authority for a reason. And just heard many comments about regionalism. And I guess I think that process that we've gone through did that. You know, transit, I know we get benefits from transit too. It would be helpful, some of the other funding for transit, where else it goes. I know Oro Valley. So, anyway, I guess, you know, and then the exercise of showing us where the outpatch, that would get around it, but yeah, I'm in a quandary of where we go. I think it seemed like, again, I came in late, but it seemed like there was a good process. But everybody can make a different mousetrap and ask everybody, and it's going to be a different one. And it's hard to make group decisions. And I think at this point, how do we check this information and match it up for fairness? I hope we can move forward. I really do.
Thank you. And on that regional response, obviously Oro Valley provides their own operations, but RTA provides funding. RTA provides transit for all other regional partners as well, being County, Sahuarita, Marana. So that's broken down, and we can demonstrate that later. I think I had Terry and then Chris. Terry, you're next.
Carol's before me.
That's okay, but Terry, go ahead.
So Sam, this is a lot of work, obviously, and you know, like Shane and others have said, really appreciate the information. But the number of projects alone on here, I'm just curious, and I'm sure you guys have given thought to this. I'm just curious what it might look like if there's a timeline that could be provided that shows how all of these projects could be completed in the 20, because it's not just these, obviously, right? It's the deferred projects. You guys have two deferred. You have how many that still have been completed from RTA, bond projects. So combining all of those, you know, 11 or 12 additional that aren't on here over the next 20 years, is there any concern about the city's ability to be able to deliver those, the bandwidth within your organization to be able to bring these to fruition?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I know most of you received the note from Rick to put our projects into what period they're going. I think we've got all our projects in periods 1 through 3. So we've already taken them to deliver these.
And that includes the ones that have yet to be completed and the deferred? Okay.
Good question, and we need to circle back on that. And as we look at the periods, then we can break it down and demonstrate what we believe is the historical delivery record and how we can spread it out over the 4 periods. So that exercise is coming later, and Rick and his team are working on that. Carolyn, Chris, that's all I had. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, just a couple of comments. I just want, you were all talking about the TMC kind of half of the whole equation, but there's also the Citizens Advisory Committee, and we're playing a big role in this too. And like Tom said, this is helpful information to have, and I've been coming here for however many months or years, expressing some of the frustration that we've had at the CAC while we were waiting for the road project, as Dan said earlier, waiting for it to be done while we could have been working on all these other categories, and they could clash because, as you see, with what we adopted, kind of it is clashing, especially between transit and roads. But I just want everybody to, this is helpful information, but I want to, everybody to be reminded of that frustration we've had, because then when you all went through your project list, what do you call it? The framework. We were tasked with talking about safety, we're talking about transit, all those other things. And then when you adopted your framework, tagged on were things that we never talked about yet. We hadn't talked about yet, which is or decided yet about what the category numbers were. And we did get put in a box because we waited until that number was locked in for the roads, and then we were asked to decide how to spend all the money that's left over. And I think that, you know, he said holistic many times, and that's kind of how we've been, majority of our committee has been trying to look at it as more in a holistic way. So I just want to say this is helpful. I have no idea what to do with it next, but it has helped, and I would love it if other jurisdictions would go through something similar. But I don't know that anybody, some of the other jurisdictions will have more to add besides the project list, although perhaps the county, because the county had that cover memo talking about other categories to be spending on besides the corridors. So I don't know. I just want to don't forget about the CAC, because we're still meeting and it's still a little messy over there.
Chris, and then again, after Chris, I want to check on time, make sure everybody's okay to keep going. Go ahead, Chris.
I'll be brief. Actually, I'm a member of the CAC too, so I really appreciate the approach. I view it as the CAC's got to wrangle with prioritization. I mean, this is helpful with regard to identifying where things make the list and don't make the list. How we can start with this. I appreciate it also from the perspective of the echo of what you were saying, is that this approach is the city's reframing of the question, what's the challenge we're trying to solve? And answers to them. Rather than being merely focused on roads and how do we get people from A to B, broader in a car, it's broader than. And so I appreciate that perspective, because it leads the conversation that we have been having and will continue to have at the CAC about the balance in the towards people in cars and people not in cars. And that's ultimately sort of where we're headed from a transportation solution region. And so I think this approach offers that perspective on helping to answer, solve with regional. Every jurisdiction, small community, everybody has their own sort of challenges. Regionally, regional transportation investment. What does that look like? That's what this is. And this is helpful from the CAC deliberation standpoint, in my opinion, because it refocuses and communicates this is the city's top priority is very clear. So there are absolutely members of the CAC who agree with it. But we're going to continue to have that conversation. But I hear the reaction to this is a new approach, but I think it doesn't disrupt the CAC's approach and shouldn't disrupt the framework that we've built. It's a piece of information that helps prioritization. And I think that prioritization of regional, that's helpful. That's my thought on it.
Thank you. So again, I want to check on time. It's 10:39. It's 10:39. Everybody okay to go until 11, then a hard stop at 11? Everybody's okay with that?
I got one quick question if I can. Sam, was all the cost estimating stuff we did with your team over the last several months, were you able to fold that into this? Okay.
All right. 11 o'clock is good to keep going until 11. Okay, thank you. I don't want to lose anybody. This is a good conversation. Very helpful. So to kind of circle back to what we've been talking about all morning today, if you look at the framework, everything that's in the green on the TMC approved framework is also consistent with what we talked about earlier this morning to include those 5 projects, bring them back into the framework. So what I like to focus the conversation on is on the framework now. So unfortunately, as we mentioned, we still have to look at where do you trim back to make sure that you have a fiscally balanced plan. So I want to open up that conversation. Any thoughts, any wisdom, any process you want to use? If you recall, again, this is the working group considered this the ranking. They had highest rank to lowest rank, and then consider the jurisdictional ranking. So this list is as ranked as you would want to consider it by the working group. So what you have in front of you is still $372 million over budget. So any thought, any questions on how do you want to tackle that exercise? Anybody would like more muffins? Go ahead, Shane.
So quite frankly, I'd like to, I'd like to have some just downtime with my own thoughts and maybe my team and figure out, okay, I mean, how do we take the value of what the city of Tucson has brought to the table here? How do we take the value of the conversation that we had? I mean, Marana offered up Ina Road as a possible way to help get across the finish line. I've offered up in my community, revisiting the scope of our work, at least from like an acquisition standpoint. We could like shrink our dollars a little bit with some reasonable level of confidence. And maybe we try to bring back some solutions that way instead of trying to hammer it out here. There's been a lot that's been on the table this morning. I don't know if I'm in a position to offer a whole lot of value.
Thank you. Good perspective, Jan.
Pretty much the same thing as Shane. I feel like we're moving in one direction and a lot of new information came in, and for us to just continue to move down that same path without stopping a moment and listening to what's come in today, and at least be willing to see what it means to us as the county or to other jurisdictions and take that is not, I need, as I've said earlier, I don't want to throw out good information simply because I'm done by a process. So let us all absorb that and perhaps then noodle it individually and within the jurisdictions and come back and some.
Sounds good. As you all know, we have the first Wednesday of every month set aside for the TMC meeting. So please look at your calendar. If we're gonna get together again, that would be the first Wednesday in November at 9 o'clock. Go ahead, Jeff.
I'd like to look at again, the funding that we've put aside for transit, what we're spending on it now. Does this, what the city's proposing, fit within what we have? I'd like to look at that a little bit more, maybe at the next meeting. And then we had to consider, I guess, landscaping and some of these other items that are in the hard costs here. Those being part of the local contribution, and start to look at that. I know you had mentioned, what can we contribute from a local match section? So maybe it's that aspect. And
So as a reminder, again, if I may, if there is a column on here and some of the jurisdictions already offered local match. The ones who have not, please let us know as soon as you can. That's an ongoing request so we can complete the picture.
Yeah, and even I know we want to have complete roads, but if we have a multi-purpose path on, we need a sidewalk also. For those types of, just in the scope.
Same thing, yeah, definitely. Scope, limits, additional funds. Those are ongoing questions and requests for anybody to fine tune that. Feel free to send that information to Rick and our staff, and we'll update it as we go.
Just furthering that thought, there was one specific project that got a lot of conversation with the CAC that I would like to hear your input on, and that's the Colossal Cave Road project. It's extremely expensive because it has to go over the railroad tracks and also has a lot of potential historic property or sensitive property impacts. And I noticed that the city has essentially broken that out and just taken the Marianne Cleveland Way portion of it. I think the questions that we had were whether it could be phased and maybe only one of those phases go forward in this RTA next, or perhaps because there's still some alignment questions, the possibility of a new alignment, whether we might be able to, instead of funding a presumed alignment and cost, rather do the alignment study and perhaps an intersection improvement or something as a substitute for this $157 million project. So a way of perhaps changing the scope there and still moving the project forward, in baby steps, maybe. So that'd be something worth, in our view, hearing some input from you.
We will absolutely be happy to get you some additional information. We're taking some looks at different options and things.
Yeah, I think it's probably a city county confab of some kind to kind of give us an idea of where you would break. If Sam's saying, break right there, we know that the city limits includes a portion of Colossal Cave Road. So how we deal with that as an RTA next project is important.
Thank you. Again, I'm hoping that we'll have another follow-up meeting. So if for any reason anyone is not able to attend, let us know after this meeting, but please do hold that date and time. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Or how do you meant the 8th, right? The second Wednesday?
The
First,
first Wednesday of November, whatever is the date. What's the
November
date?
1st.
That's
Oh,
next week.
I'm sorry, the second Wednesday. I'm sorry.
That's right. I was gonna say.
Second
double check.
Wednesday
Second
of
Wednesday, November 8th.
November.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
I just have a request that would really be super helpful for us to bring to the CAC as you're looking at shaving projects or taking them out. If you could look at a number between 800 and 900 million instead of continuing with 1.12, that I would really love to see some movement between the CAC and the TMC's plan, because I think, one of the scenarios is for there to be two different plans going to the board. And if that happens and the board picks one, I don't think there's any way we're going to get the voters of the region to support it. I would like us to come together. And that would be helpful if you could take however much more, but look at a different, you might not be able to get there, but it would be really helpful for us if you took it down as far as you can in your deliberations. That's still a vast portion of the monies that we're struggling with. The categoricals, which like the city, we think is pretty important.
Yeah, maybe to be specific on that, the city's $443 million proposal for transit. If we could bulk that up into a regional number, that would be very helpful. And we understand that there's also a high capacity transit project that has had its home for the last few months, at least for conversational purposes in the transit element. We just, need to satisfy that, and that helps us figure out what that number is. If it's 1.1 billion for that we're aiming for here in this exercise, or if it's something less that would be necessary if the CAC's 690 million transit budget were to be adopted.
So Shane, and then I have a comments. Go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, I appreciate the ask from CAC. I just don't know how to get there because I've only got 2 projects on that list. So unless the city of Tucson is willing to drop some projects to support more transit money, you're talking to the group, but Miranda's now only got 2 projects. I only have 2 projects. Oro Valley only has 2 projects. South Tucson has 1. The tribe only has 1. So you're asking something, but you're looking at the group, but the only person that can really influence this may be the county or the city. So I just want to be realistic about what we're dealing with here. And quite frankly, I don't benefit at all from the transit. My community is not looking at those dollars. We don't want to tap those dollars. We're not looking to put application in for them. Now, maybe you're to Terry's point, leaving some unidentified source of funding for the future project request. Year 20, maybe my community is at a point where we're wanting to tap a little transit. I don't know, but right now we don't have any projects to identify by way of high capacity transit. So that's all here. So from a CAC's perspective, I'm not getting it. It's not registering with me.
Well, I'll just respond, is that you all were talking about trying to shave some money from projects.
Just to get our projects in.
Right, yeah, and I would, that I could look at the city and the county, or, you know, it's just, I don't know what else to do without being in a stalemate with the CAC is to try to get some
Well,
movement there.
the
Yeah.
CAC needs to be talking real then. I mean, if you look at, I mean, Oro Valley is 2 projects. I'm 2 projects. So what is not real about that? And that's where I kind of struggle with the continued ask from CAC and pressure to add more money for transit. I mean, when we're talking shaving costs, I'm looking at how do we shave $375 million so that we can get our 33 or 36, whatever it is, still funded. And if the expectation of CAC is that my community goes to 1 project in Oro Valley, and I mean, I can't speak for you guys, but I feel comfortable saying we're all in the same boat. That's a hard sell, a really, really hard
I
sell.
understand, that was a request that would be helpful with the CAC. I would repeat it.
And if I may,
Thanks for championing that.
Yeah.
but, and if I may, and it's really, I think, something that needs to be said. Unfortunately, CAC's framework is still based on a sales tax increase framework, and we've already responded to that. That needs to be addressed as well, but they're still operating under the assumption that there is a 1/10 of a cent increase. And the board has already said,
No, we're not.
Not true.
and the board has already said, well, no, the 690 number you're bringing up is based on that assumption.
Not accurate.
Yeah, it is.
The discussion has been the assumption, it's an option and it's suggested that you consider it. All the numbers that we've been talking about are driven by the existing number. That's it.
No, I'll go back to the 2 numbers that were just used, the 690 and the 990. Those are all based on the tax increase assumption.
Okay, so what,
Dividing up the existing pot.
yeah, so the direction I've been giving the CAC is to come to a list of projects that could be funded if we stuck with the 691 million of transit. And looking at that, see which projects were being eliminated as a result. And at that point, make a decision about what level, not just transit and not just the corridor projects, but all the other categoricals should be funded at. Each of the other categoricals has minor differences from the TMC framework. But overall, this is how we're forced at this point to bring this all back together. We have to look at it and say, are we willing to cut an additional $150 million worth of projects beyond the 1.1 billion in order to fund transit and the other categoricals at the level that currently we've been discussing them. That's a big question, and I know there's going to be a lot of debate about it. But until we have that in black and white, what those stark realities are about the loss of projects and the ability to fund them, we're not going to be able to make that, have that final conversation about the allocations.
I think, Jeff, you had your hand up, or no? Okay. All right, go ahead, Terry.
No, I was just gonna say, so to this point of the CAC's ask of the TMC to reconsider the monies, I think the same ask goes back to the CAC. You know, there's a huge push and focus on transit. I haven't heard from anybody where the push for transit, what that does for the region as a whole. What is the benefit? What's the ridership? What's the reduction in vehicles on the roadway? What is really the cost benefit to the region by adding another 150 million? You're saying that we have to cut $150 million worth of the 30. No, we're gonna have to cut more than that. Because with the new numbers that we have, we already have to go back to the drawing board and cut additional road projects. That's why I came today with Ina Road. saying, you know what, in the grand scheme of things, if we're going to get this thing across the finish line, people have to give. But what I continue to hear from the CAC is transit, 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 and everybody else has to give up the road projects. And he's right. Jeff's not giving up 2 road projects. And Sal Rita isn't giving up 2 road projects. And I'm not giving up 2 road projects. And I don't see the county giving up the 7 or whatever projects are still left on the county. 6 projects. So, you know, the same thing, the same question that's being asked of us and the same ask that's coming to us. I'm like, you know, look at this realistically. Who's going to come to the table and vote for $690 million worth of transit when there's no analysis and there's no, it's just, we need more transit. We need more transit. We need more transit. But is that true? Is that accurate? I've not seen anything that shows that we're going to get a significant bump in people that are going to jump on the buses and start using buses. I don't see it.
All right, I got Brian and
Just to respond, just read the long range regional transit. Talks about a lot of that.
go ahead, Brian.
Thank you. I've just been sitting back and listening to this, and I want to provide a different perspective from the CAC because I tend to be on the different side of that. I got to start with this. I'm not opposed to transit. I'm not opposed to any form of transportation. Everybody in the region has different needs and different ways that they get around, whether it be walking, biking, mass transit, or personal vehicles. So I'm not opposed to any of these, but I do struggle. I fear that the CAC is going to come out extremely divided, and I'm not sure yet where that's going to land. But I do have concern and comments that have been made at the CAC where the goal is to eliminate personal vehicle and motivate people towards mass transit and mass transit. Generally speaking, the majority of it benefits within City of Tucson limits. And I do caution the group because I do want this plan to pass. If we eliminate the majority of the projects outside of city limits, I do not believe this will pass the voters. And in that case, nobody gets anything. And to the point I keep going back to is RTA is currently providing considerable money through the current plan to transit. And if RTA next does not pass, that funding goes away. So there will be a significant amount. Not only will there not be an expansion of transit, there will be a reduction of mass transit. So it is in everybody's best interest to be cautious and reasonable, to make this regional and to consider, yes, all modes of transit or all modes of transportation, but that does not mean trying to eliminate personal vehicle use. But that is my fear, is if we don't collaborate and coalesce, which I believe everyone's been trying to do for 3-4 years now, if this plan fails, it will be unfortunate for the region.
Thank you, Brian. And as I promised, we're going to have a hard stop here. We're starting to lose people. November 8th,
November 8th, yeah.
9 o'clock, we'll get back together again. And I hate to lose people
Well, can
here.
I
So
just want a quick response. I think the CAC is up to the challenge. I mean, I think it works both ways. Right now, we're still, basically all I'm saying. So I think there's room to move. And I think people here are willing to help. But
thank you. And again, thank you all for participating. We're adjourned.
Good to see you.
I wanted to